What's up everybody, how's it going, and welcome to this episode of Car Rant, and more importantly, welcome back to another episode of Unexpected. Today we're going to be talking about wagons, or if you're overseas, estates, as well you guys seem to appreciate yours, especially you German folk. RS6 Avants, all the BMW wagons, even the Z Coupe could be called a wagon. Y'all have it made over there in Germany. But while the Germans may have figured out the wagon game perfectly, there are a few companies that stepped into that ring and really brought a lot to the table that we just totally missed. And today, we're going to be talking about these unexpected models. And to kick off this whole list, we're going to be starting with the LEXUS IS300 Sportback. Yes, they actually made these. Now, for those who aren't aware, I actually owned an IS300 sedan, and I gotta say, it was probably one of the most exciting and also wildly depressing experiences of my life, just because I unfortunately had a car with a lot of issues. But when it was working, and when I was able to drive it, it was an incredibly good car to drive and was extremely comfortable. With a 2JZ under the hood here in America powering this car, it was quite formidable, and as a result it saw a lot of track time with some drifters and other folks in that type of arena. But what everyone completely forgot was that the wagon also had a 2JZ under the hood. Basically, all of the good things that you had in the sedan could be found in the wagon. And as a result, it was completely slept on. And possibly with some decent reason. After all, the wagon did not have a manual option. Its styling wasn't exactly for everyone. And most people would much rather have the sedan, as the sedan was given car design of the year and not the hatchback. And when they did the redesigned facelift, it definitely helped, but not everyone was on board. That said, you can still find these hatches, and they're out there. And like I said, while they don't have a manual out the door, swapping one in can't be all that difficult, as people put manuals into everything. Like Amelia putting a manual Honda into a Prius. While finding one of these will be tricky because of the fact that they were not as popular as a sedan, when you do find one, expect to pay around $5,000, and given the type of people that were buying these, definitely wasn't the hot boys, I'll tell you that much. You'll probably find one in decent shape, just maybe not with the best of vehicle maintenance histories. Next up, in keeping with that beautiful Euro-esque styling, the Volvo 240. This is a car that was so mind-blowing to see it on track at Drift Nirvana a couple years ago. Mainly because the driver was incredible, and the LS1 that he had under the hood was cranking it and just shredding smoke everywhere with those tires. It was extremely enlightening. This is a car that just way too many people sleep on, to the point where I wasn't the only one who was in absolute shock seeing a Volvo 240, a car which, to be fair, both the sedan and the hatch are wildly slept on, but they're not something you expect some, younger man to be getting out of, let alone putting it sideways. Yeah, rear wheel drive with the ability to swap almost anything into it, and even in their bare bones form, they were extremely well built. These are cars that people need to be aware of because they could be used to drift. While it is one of the few Euro cars that'll probably ever make it on one of these unexpected lists, this is a very solid placement because of the fact that, again, Volvo as a brand isn't seen as a motorsportsy kind of brand. They're seen much more as the safe and dentist-like brand, as so many times this poor brand has been slapped with. But the tuning potential, more importantly, the swap and modification potential of these cars is extremely high. Like I said, seeing it go on track and actually beat out cars that were built for this, yeah, the driver was good, but the potential is built into the shell. They come with great weight distribution out the door, and so it makes it incredibly easy to just track them. And in keeping with the German cars, which I know I said there would not be a lot of on this list, we have the Audi S4 Avant B5. Now, many people are very familiar with the Audi platform, as the A4 was a very commonly easily acquired car, came with quattro, turbo sauce, everything. And on top of that, if you wanted a wagon, there was also the RS4 Avant and RS4 by proxy, but we couldn't really get those in America. So it leaves people wondering, why spend the money to get this bloated, oversized version of an A4 if it's just gonna be heavier? Well, with a 2.7 liter V6 bi-turbo with a manual option, you should definitely check this out. While its saloonish styling for a wagon might not appeal to everybody, having seen a couple of these modified in person and also at the Chick-fil-A car meet, they're pretty good looking cars and have a lot of room. After all, what's the point of buying a wagon if you don't actually use the space? It just leaves us all wondering, why not? This has an incredible engine platform that has a lot of tuning potential because, again, it is made by Volkswagen Group, which, if you're not aware, Volkswagen pretty much supports everything that's coming out of Europe. And the tuning opportunities are there because you can get things like APR tunes off the shelf for one of these cars, which means that you can basically tune it stock. Hello. With all of this said, finding one might not be as hard as you think, as Audi did become much more loved after its mid-80s crisis. Finding one in decent shape might not be that hard, and again, with some of these rather unusual cars, there's a bit of a price gap. I've seen some go for as low as $1,000 and as high as $10,000 because it had like no miles. It's just, do your research, make sure that when you get into one of these cars, you are buying the best deal. Now for our next entry on this list, we're gonna finally leave the European styling alone and come back to America and revisit a platform that we've technically talked about in a previous episode, just not in its wagon format, and that's the Ford Country Squire. I'm gonna just call it what it is, out the door. It is a Crown Victoria wagon. There's no getting around it. It's based off the same platform as the old Mercury Grand Marquis from our last episode, so of course everything I had to say there pretty much applies here. Comfortable, good power, Windsor V8, making pretty decent power for what it was. I mean, it's a late 80s, early 90s car. It's not fast, but what it makes up for is reliability. Their things are tanks, they survive everything, and more importantly, they're boats, which means driving it is just super relaxed, super comfortable. Just, big hefty cruising, going down the highway, you got nothing to worry about. You can get these cars for like $1,000, okay? And while it is in fact an older Ford, which means you gotta watch out for things like wiring and issues with the motor if it's not been run in a while, they're good, they're solid. I mean, if it was good enough for the cops to use the non-wagon version to turn into a cop car, pretty sure you're gonna be okay in yours. And last but not least, we had to include another car made in America, designed in Japan, and sold in our streets, the Honda Accord wagon. I'm gonna put it to you straight. Everybody knows the Civic. Everybody knows the Accord. People are big on Honda or are just familiar with the C and are familiar with CRXs. But not everyone's keen on the Accord wagon. It's just because it's just enough different that most people kind of forget it exists. And while the front end is more or less the same as any other Accord, just with a hatchback rear end that's elongated, you'd think these cars would have much more appeal and much more attention, but they didn't. It was kind of this weird hole in the strategy. And eventually they'd come back to this styling a little bit, but the early mid-90s up until 1997 styling is truly unique and deserves a spot on this list because of the fact that it's so easily overlooked for its coupe brethren and also its Civic cousins. With the ability to, much like any other Honda, swap anything into it that is a Honda motor, It has so much tuning potential already built into it just for having the name Honda, but they also make for an incredibly nice VIP style builds, of which I honestly wish I thought I had come up with the idea years ago. After all, I started off with a Honda. I should have looked at these because A, they're quirky enough and weird enough that not enough people have seen them. B, maybe YouTube clout? Don't know, don't really care at this point because I got an Evo. All in all, these cars are extremely cool and extremely underappreciated, and they need more love. Again, like anything that's a Honda, probably about $1,000 and you'd find one that's in at least right enough shape so you could do whatever you wanted to with it, but also it is incredibly old. But with that, that is our 5 unexpectedly good potential project cars list. They're all wagons. Do you agree with our list? What else should be on this list in your opinion? I'd love to know. After all, there are plenty of wagons out there. These ones just happen to be very standout as not enough people, in my opinion, know about them. I mean, I was culture shocked with the Volvo 240 and definitely went and got schooled on that Audi. What do you guys think? Let us know down below. And as always, thank you all for watching, and we'll see you on the next episode. God bless and peace.